I'm going to be talking today about riding my Bacchetta Corsa A70 on a club ride with a bunch of upright bike riders. So here I'm taking off from my home and we're riding to the Rail Trail Cafe where we leave for our bike ride at 8 in the morning. There'll be about 25 riders this morning. It's a big group today. We're just taking off and heading out from the Rail Trail Cafe. So at first we'll be riding through the burbs for a bit. I'm going to speed it up here to 2 to 3 times normal speed just to speed things up a little bit. And we're just warming up and riding through the suburbs. Got a little pace line going here, but mostly we're just chatting and warming up. Pretty soon here we'll be out in the wilderness a little bit on the rural areas just around our town. Here we are, and we're sort of formed a double pace line now, picked up the speed a little bit. Still just chatting. I'm chatting away to Mike right beside me on the right there. I usually hang out towards the back of the pace line. You can see here's a little hill when people are standing up. A small hill like this, I can keep up pretty well. It's the long hills the recumbent has a hard time keeping pace with the upright bikes. But here we've crested the hill, and pretty soon we're going down the other side, and this is where the recumbent really comes into its own. It's very fast on the downhills, so I'm riding my brakes the whole way down this little hill. And then pumping up the other side, everyone's standing up. But again, it's just a short climb, so I can romp right up it, keep up with the people in front. And then we turn the corner, and I guess our warm-up comes to an end pretty quick here, because pretty soon we turn onto Highway 6. Here we are, and it's a bigger road, and it's got a fairly good shoulder, and so we turn into a single-file pace line. It looks like I'm quite a ways back from the guy in front of me, but it's a wide-angle lens, so it's only about 3 feet most of the time behind the guy in front of me. Here I turn wide to go across those railroad tracks at an angle. Your body is sort of wedged right into the recumbent. You don't have any body language at all, so I'm very careful about anything that might bother the balance of the bike. And it's slightly uphill, 1 to 2%. And so that's a bit of a disadvantage on the recumbent. And so I just hang back and draft the guys in front, pulling in. Pretty soon we'll be pulling off onto a side road off the highway, and that's where the first real climb starts. It's about a kilometer and a half maybe of 6 to 10%. But right now I'm fourth in line here, and there's a bunch of people behind me. And here we come to the turnoff. And right away we hit a pretty steep uphill. And people start to pass me right away. This recumbent is really fast on the flats and faster on the downhills, but you pay the penalty on the climbs. And it's a relatively fast recumbent too. There are others that apparently climb as well as upright bikes, but that's not this one, and that's not me. On my upright bike, I'm about mid-pack with the climb, but on the recumbent, I'm dead last. So they're up there drawing away from me, and they're all chatting away, and I'm working like crazy, just trying to keep up. I think a lot of it has to do with breathing on the recumbent. You're lying on your back, which is a much harder position to breathe than when you're leaning over forward. But anyways, I'm hanging in there. After a while we crest the hill and it starts flattening out. And at this point I can start reeling them all back in. It's still a little uphill, but I'm already pulling them in. And we crest the top, and this is where the recumbent comes into its own, and I'm able to sneak my way right back up to the front. Not quite, actually. There's a bunch of four other riders who are very strong climbers who, as you'll see later, I never quite catch. But anyways, here it's just bombing along, going downhill here. And it's like they're standing still. There's Mike, who I was chatting with earlier. And now there's a bit of an uphill, and the front four lead guys pass me again. So it's kind of lonely on a recumbent. You're always either way behind or way in front. At least in steep hills. On rolling country it's not quite like that, as you'll see later. But now it turns and starts leveling off and going downhill again, and of course I'm able to reel them back in pretty good. The guy in front is in a full tuck, and it's still nothing compared to what I can do. Anyways, a little while later we come back down to the flats where we regather, and lo and behold, there are the four strong climbers who are way out front. So I can't quite keep up to really strong climbers, especially if there's a group of them and they can draft each other to keep their speed up. So here we're just taking it easy on the flats after the climb. There's Zeleny Gardens off to the left. And just taking it easy, chatting to each other after our hill climb experience. But pretty soon up here we're going to get back on Highway 6. And again, we quickly develop a single baseline. It's busy, and this is slightly uphill, but it's also into a very strong headwind. And I have a real advantage into a headwind. It's probably a 25 kilometer an hour headwind. And so even though it's uphill, I take the lead and hang on to the lead for the next 4 kilometers or so. Even though it's probably up to a 3% climb. I have such an advantage in headwinds that I just hang in there. So going about probably between 25 on the steepest sections and 35 along here, and then we come to the top of the climb and start going downhill. And on the downhill, I'm hitting closer to 60 kilometers an hour, and nobody can keep up. I've dropped them. By the time I turn off up here, I glance back and they're probably 300-400 meters behind me. So then this is off on Durham Meadow Road. Just take it easy and coast along until they catch up. Here comes the first ones. So then we pass Lumbee, and here's on Maple Lake Road, heading out to the east. We're going on the Rawlings Lake Loop today. And we very quickly developed a fast pace line along here. It's a fun road. It's kind of rolling hills. And there's 4 strong guys in front of me. And it's fun going with just a few riders, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, because when it's an uphill, I can jump behind them and they can drag me up the hill. When it's downhill, like here, I can just pop right ahead of them and they can draft along behind me. So we're constantly shifting places depending on the grade, and we get the advantage of both styles of bike. And here we're catching up to the ladies. There are 4 ladies who took off early, 3. And just to get ahead of us a little bit. And as we pass them, they're like, oh God, fun's over. Stop talking, ladies, back to work. The guys have caught us. And so there's Albers Road, by the way, just off to the left. That's where Lois and Darby live. And this fellow Brian he wants to hang on to the lead, and so I'm like, oh, okay, you can hang on. I know I could pass him very easily, but he wanted to hang on. But then he gives me the hand signal, and off I go. And it's rolling here, so there's some ups and some downs. And I gave him the hand signal now, and the 4 guys take over. There's a bunch of people behind us. By now, they've all caught up. And this is one of the problems with a big group. I can't easily jump from the back end to the front end. and take advantage of the recumbent's benefits. So here I'm actually not quite at the back end. There's a couple of people behind me still, but there was a gap, so I jumped in. Now, of course, I'm just coasting. There's nothing for me to do. Here they come. I usually don't sit in the middle of a long lineup because I'm sort of like a brake. I don't make much draft for people to hang on to, so I'm either at the front or the back. And so if it's rolling terrain, it takes me a long time to get from the back up to the front to take over on the downhills. And then on the uphills, it takes a long time to get all the way to the back. Here you've got sort of a double pace line going again. So it's really fun to have just one or two or maybe three strong riders in rolling terrain. We switch back and forth quickly and can maintain a pretty amazing speed. But we're going fast here, and I'm not working real hard. I'm just sucking along at the rear of the pace line. Pretty soon here we turn off Rawlings Lake Road. This is all slightly uphill, by the way, into still a headwind, but it's uphill enough that it's hard for me to actually take over. Here we are on Rawlings Lake Road, and this is the start of our second climb. That's Rawlings Lake off to the left. Beautiful countryside. And there's a few of us out front. I like to be up front at the start of a climb so that I'm not dropped too bad by the top of the climb. And we're starting the climb and people are starting to roar past. But the fellow in front of me is kind of new to this group and not as strong, so I'm able to pass him. And Nancy right in front of me, I'll go past her too. This is about a kilometer and a half climb of probably not too much, 4 to 6% or something. And I just sit back, realize I'm going to be passed, so I spin. That's the ticket. You have to spin. You can't stand up and grunt your way up a hill on a recumbent. So you spin, and I sit back and just relax and look at the scenery. Relax my neck and my shoulders so I can breathe easy. And at the top, again, it levels out, and I start pulling up behind everybody and starting to pass them. Coming down to the other side, we'll be going back to Highway 6 again in a while, but this time heading back towards Lumbee. It's a nice fast downhill. This is really fun, this stretch. Got a nice tuck there. I angle my front toe straight forward and pull my knees in together and straighten my arms out. I don't have much wind resistance. But just before I catch the front runners, we actually come to Highway 6, and we'll sort of stop here and wait for the people behind to catch up. I'll congratulate each other on how fast we are. Then we take off and we're going back towards Lumbee, and this is a really fun stretch of road. It's very rolling but slightly downhill. And so this is where if you have just a couple of riders, you can really swap back and forth and really increase your speed. But we're off to a start. It's up a slight hill at the beginning, and the front people took off at quite a hard pace. And so I'm really grunting to keep up. Don't quite make it, but then it levels off and I'm able to catch them. Here we go, and there's about 6 people or something, and already everyone behind us has been dropped. And it's leveling off, and I see there's 4 or 5 or 6 out front. I go to catch up with them. It starts going downhill, so it's easy to catch them. Pulling behind them. And now I'm just waiting for another rolling downhill, and I take off and blast past them and take up the front. I have to coast a little bit when I go past the front guy, otherwise I'll drop them really easily. I'm always watching in my mirrors to make sure I haven't dropped anyone on the downhills. It's really easy. Here we're going up a bit, and so I let them by. And still a little long for me to quickly jump in and out, but it's okay. Now the front guy is pulled off. We're still going slightly uphill. He pulls in behind me. Now we're going downhill, but they're going hard, so I'm just taking it easy behind. And the next front guy pulls off and coasts to the back. Oh, he didn't quite. Now it's downhill, so I blast out front. Coast a little bit so they can catch up. And it levels out, but I'm still going strong, and they're tucked right in behind me. Then finally along here, I pull over and they go by, but I see the other guys have been dropped. There's only two, so I put a real push on. These guys are really strong, and I just managed to hang on, just catching up to them just as we come into Lumbee, and start taking it easy. So the three of us managed to drop everyone else. And so here we're just taking it easy through Lumbee and chatting, and we'll stop up ahead and wait for everybody, and then pedaled all the way back to Vernon. I won't show any of that, but met up at the Rail Trail Cafe and had a coffee and a snack and a little visit, and here I am after the Rail Trail Cafe, just heading back home on my own road. So that was a pretty good Tuesday morning ride with the Vernon Wheelers. Going to my house, turn off the headlights and the tail light. Then I pull out my GPS on my cell phone, have a look on Strava to see how far we went. And looks like 86.6 kilometers in 3 hours, a good Tuesday morning ride.